Good evening and namaskar. I'm Prabhu Chawla, editorial director of the New Indian Express. I'm hosting a show today which is Expressions. It's a new platform, new initiative by our group to involve various personalities to discuss important issues which are plaguing the country. It can be anything from potato to politics, but today we are going to discuss pandemic to politics. And we have got a distinguished panel of people. Manish Tiwari, of course, is an old friend of mine, but he is also one of the youngest person whom I have known for many years. He wears many hats. At the moment, he is a Lok Sabha member for Punjab. Earlier, he was the union minister. He is an advocate, very erudite speaker, and a scholar as well. He writes almost every day for one newspaper or another. We have also Dr. Vinay Sahasrabudhe, Vice President of the BJP, again a scholar of eminence. He runs a research organization in Mumbai, and he has been the intellectual face of the BJP. His views on various subjects have been very, very well known. And he is also heading Indian Council of Cultural Relations. Am I right, Dr. Saab?
Right, sir.
Both of them are very erudite scholars in their own right. And asking them to discuss politics, of course, looks little more funnier these days because there are no much better things also. But the problem is both of them belong to the opposite camps, and politics of pandemic is becoming much more important these days. You find both the ruling party, BJP, and the Congress attacking each other with some kind of arrows which never harm anybody, but they create an impression that normally a tragedy is a unifier for any nation. But in India, it has become a divider along political lines. Why? You can see bodies lying all over the place in Delhi, people waiting in the queue for getting some treatment or tested. Yet our politicians, instead of speaking one language, are speaking against each other, placing the blame at each other's doors. Why? I could find no better panel than these two outstanding orators. I will start with Manish Tiwari first. Manish, you tell me, because your party seems to be very aggressive. From your leader Rahul Gandhi to Sonia Ji, both are speaking like a political language. Some of the suggestions made by them are very good, but their language is basically meant to score a political brownie point. Why, Manish?
Prabhuji, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to your show. And as always, whenever you decide to curate something, it's not only successful, but it is extremely profound. So once again, it's a pleasure having a conversation with somebody who was actually a friend of my late father's, and we've always looked up to him. Prabhuji, in fact, I do not think that above the usual cut and thrust of politics, which is par for the course in our country, there is really a division between or a substantive division between the opposition and the government. In fact, if you look around the country, all state governments have cooperated with the federal government. They may have had their concerns with regard to various issues, but notwithstanding those concerns, whatever guidelines have been issued by the National Disaster Management Authority, all state governments, irrespective of whichever political shade or color they come from, they have implemented or tried to implement them in letter and spirit. Then, of course, if you move away from the state governments and you come to the political parties, obviously have concerns beginning. I think it really began with the whole migrant crisis, because you had an abrupt lockdown. At some point in time, the wisdom of having a lockdown at a 4-hour notice, would obviously be debated in Parliament. But I think generally everybody went along with that also. The problem really started when you had millions of people starting to walk home and getting mowed down by trucks and buses, crushed to death on railway tracks. And at that point in time, people started asking that, hey, why is the government being so insensitive? What the government actually did a month later in terms of running those trains, couldn't it have been done earlier when this tragedy started unfolding. And I think that was the inflection point when questions started to be asked. And then, since most governments are really innovating on strategy on a day-to-day basis, and it seems as if the central government has now left it entirely onto the state governments, saying that now it's your baby, you handle it. So obviously one thing led to another. But by and by, if you, let's say, step back from the usual cut and thrust, and if you go back to the Spanish flu or the first pandemic which the 20th century saw in 1918, even at that point in time, at the height of the pandemic, in most democratic countries, especially Britain, because it had the biggest empire, the British Parliament kept functioning, other institutions kept functioning, government was being held to account for their handling of a crisis, because in 1918, nobody knew what a virus was like. And 100 years later, nobody seems to know, what a coronavirus is like. So to conclude, I think we as politicians, or India as a polity, generally has behaved far, far more soberly than what you are seeing in various countries around the world.
No, you can say various countries. I don't know so much of differences happening in either UK or and Europe, and even in America. Trump is doing so many things. They are attacking him for different reasons. But coming back to the basic question, that still there is no united effort on the part of the parties to get together and find a solution which is acceptable to all. I know you are right when you say 4 hours notice lockdown declared, and you went along with it. That's correct. But later on, I saw the politics got into it when your leader Rahul Gandhi got into it, and he sat in Dharna with the laborers outside there, because labor problem was known from the day one. I was the first to raise it in one of my videos here, why migrant labor is being treated as a corona villain and not warriors. But 2 weeks later, nobody reacted to that at that time. When they started walking on the road, everybody reacted it. Let me go back to Dr. Sahsi. Dr. Sahab, you have heard Manish Tiwari that they have been cooperating with you. But somehow I find your leadership, your spokesperson, not leadership, the top leadership, the middle level leadership, they are always trying to find fault with the Congress party, questioning why Rahul Gandhi has not done this, what has done this thing, that thing. They have been raising questions about what they have done or not done, rather than what they are suggesting. Why do you take those suggestions seriously and implement them?
No, I think that's a very wrong impression being created. If we look at basically the crisis, the nature of the crisis, see, unlike any other natural calamity, may it be a flood or maybe earthquake or a famine, all these natural calamities are of a different category, and pandemic is very, very different, because we are fighting with an invisible enemy kind of. We cannot point out, we also cannot figure out as to what would be the spread of it, geographical spread, at the same time what would be the calendar of it, how long would it be with us, and things like that. At the same time, we have to walk a very tightrope walk kind of, because we have to save lives and also we have to take care of the livelihoods. This is not the dilemma when we face with several other calamities, and therefore it's a very difficult and extraordinarily difficult situation, I would say. And therefore, what one would expect, whosoever might be in the opposition, I am not targeting any particular party, but I believe while on the one hand, the entire country was unitedly standing behind the Prime Minister and the national leadership, unfortunately, some of the political parties, including the Congress party, tried to play kind of a petty politics, petty partisan politics, I would say. There are examples. I'm not saying it without any evidence as such. For example, some irresponsible statements coming from their leaders voicing artificial concerns, I would say. Because, for example, let us take the example of the migrant laborers. Now, it was very essential. I'll give you an example. In Madhya Pradesh, which is under BJP's control, our chief minister decided that we will ensure that nobody walks on the streets. I mean, therefore, he, for example, tried to pick up the migrant laborers coming from Maharashtra and Gujarat into the border of Madhya Pradesh, put them in buses, gave them snacks and arranged for their meals and everything, and dropped them on the border of, say, Uttar Pradesh or Jharkhand or wherever they wanted to go. And from there onwards, they went by the arrangements made by the respective state governments. This was something very easy for anybody to do. Even Rajasthan could have done that, or maybe other states, including Maharashtra, could have done that, but then they did do that. So therefore, irresponsible statements, observations which are of a very sweeping character, unnecessarily indulging in party politics, scoring brownie points. You know the kind of article Mrs. Sonia Gandhi wrote the other day in the Indian Express about Manrega. While it is a fact that this government tried to save Manrega from being exploited by local politicians, and we tried to have some systemic reforms inculcated into the implementation design of the entire scheme. It is a common knowledge. I mean, go by the reports of the CAG earlier and now, for example, and you will find the difference. But unfortunately, that was done. Again, the state governments controlled by the Congress party and their central leadership, they were speaking in different voices. Now, today, for example, Mr. Rahul Gandhi had said that the lockdown was perhaps ineffective. Maybe he has his own assessment of the situation, but the lockdown decision and the extension of lockdowns was not entirely of the center. Even before the central government, the Prime Minister announced a lockdown, Maharashtra Chief Minister had announced a lockdown. He had said that we are not going to run trains, and Maharashtra government, of which the Congress party is a partner. Even on 11th of April, 3 chief ministers of states controlled by Congress party, Punjab, Rajasthan and Maharashtra, much before the announcement of the extension of lockdown, on 11th April, on their own, they had said we are going to continue with the lockdown. So, while the central government was trying to take everybody into confidence, have a coordinated, concerted approach towards, there were no kind of bickerings on the part of the central government or the union leadership of the government. But unfortunately, these many voices created that sorry state of affairs where, unfortunately, the kind of united face that the entire nation should have put forth, we perhaps failed in that, and unfortunately, we lost an opportunity, I would say.
So you have made some points, of course, but the question arises whenever something said by Sonia Gandhi or Rahul Gandhi, it becomes a very personality clashes. They attack, because Modi comes, immediately they start attacking Modi ji or Sharad Yav, or you start attacking Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi. Country is divided as if there are only 4 leaders. Rest of the country is also following some are following Gandhis and some are following Modi. Most of them are following Modi because the voting pattern what we see. The question is, you are talking about Congress government. It says 4 hours lockdown. The question which has arisen when it was announced 4 hours before the lockdown, it should have occurred to the leadership at the top that within 4 hours, people who are migrating from one place to another, what would they do? It was not a thoughtful process. That what are the implications of inventing it, and not a demonetization where you can withdraw the currency, it can function. But you lock down people, प्रधानमंत्री का वो भाषण की जहां जो है वहीं बैठ जाएगा, उसका 15 दिन बाद नजारा हमारे को नजर आया, because it was not implementable. Like what happened in Karnataka, your own BJP chief minister did not allow the labor to move out. Then he changed his mind. Then he again changed his mind. Don't you think the opposition has the right to point out these weaknesses in the system? If you go by the number of guidelines issued by the government of India, there were 25 guidelines, there are 27 clarifications. So obviously, it seems the Congress party picked those holes in your administration and genuinely pointed out that these are the problems you must attend to, isn't it?
No. See, basically, as I have even initially stated, that the entire nature of this crisis is very, very extraordinary, and therefore extraordinary situation demands extraordinary responses. And the way the situation unfolded, the government tried to respond. And at every point of time, the opposition leaders and the other chief ministers were taken into confidence. Now, on 16th and 17th, it will be the 6th round of the dialogue between the Prime Minister and the chief ministers. So while we are taking everybody on board, we are trying to consult everybody, we are trying to seek opinions and assessment from all the chief ministers. Unfortunately, these kinds of different voices are being brought to the fore, which is not a good thing. I mean, the nation should be
united,
putting up a united show kind of, but unfortunately that is not happening. Even say, for the example, aside of this COVID thing, about China, Where was the need for?
I'll come to China later, Dr. Saab. I'll come to China later because that's
No. The point I'm trying to make is that while the approach of the Prime Minister was very thoughtful in the sense that he wanted three things. Basically, the reason behind the lockdown, as I understand, was to give a sense and ensure that people take this crisis very seriously. It is not like any other crisis, and therefore the seriousness needs to be going down in the minds of the people. That was one thing. Ensuring their participation. Now take the example of the campaign of coming out of your houses and clapping, and then also expressing your gratitude towards the warriors, including the doctors, the policemen, the Safai Karmacharis. Now, several leaders of different political parties participated who are averse to the idea of BJP. I can give the example of Mr. Sharad Pawar for this. But I didn't see any participation from the Congress party. Is it not mean-mindedness, sir? I mean, where was politics in it?
Dr. Saab, I've heard you.
Symbolic kind of.
I get your point, Dr. Saab. Manish, you have heard various things what Dr. Saab is talking about. Don't you think that you are also overreacting some point? Sometimes you have the genuine complaints. Yes, they should have been heard. But as he asking you first question, you also tweeted somewhere I read, Thali or something you said about it. Can you tell me why Congress party, as they are saying, was not rising to the occasion, involving in sitting on dharna, meeting labor, making it a TV show or photo op? That's the charges which the BJP team makes on the various Twitter social platforms.
And I think, Prabhuji, the one thing which the past 75 days has unfortunately exposed is the complete and absolute governance deficit of the NDA-BJP government. And I'll give you substantive examples. China reported to the World Health Organization on the 1st of January 2020, after a pandemic had swept through the Hubei province. Wuhan is one of the cities in the Hubei province.
Yeah.
And there is pneumonia which is not treated. Dr. Harshvardhan, in reply to a parliament question or a clarification that I asked, stated that we have been in contact with the World Health Organization since the 7th or the 8th of January with regard to this particular disease, which was later on qualified as a pandemic by the WHO on the 11th of March. India reported its first case on the 30th of January. During the whole month of February, you had the entire Europe, country after country, which was getting very badly impacted by COVID-19 or the Wuhan virus or whatever you would like to call it. Unfortunately, the government did not pay any attention to the enormity and the magnitude of the crisis between the 30th of January and the 23rd of March when the lockdown was announced. At that point in time, the government was very busy in rolling out the red carpet for President Donald Trump, toppling the Congress government in Madhya Pradesh. And suddenly, on the 23rd of March, at a 4-hour notice, when India had 381 cases from 123 districts and only 7 deaths, you decided to have the most draconian lockdown in the world. And you moved from that lockdown to a situation that when you unlocked, you were the only country whose curve was spiking like the South Pole. There is no country in the world which has unlocked when the COVID-19 curve has been spiking. We are the only exception who locked the country down when there was no need for a lockdown, when smart containment could have worked. And when you actually required a lockdown, when your health system is getting overwhelmed, you decided to open up the country.
Manish, I'll come. I'll ask you why. Give us the reason. What do you think could be the reason for doing that?
Because I don't think they thought it through. They just completely either aped China or they aped some of the other countries in the West, and they thought that they would be able to deal with the virus in a span of 21 days. I'm sorry, this is a viral infection. It has to run through society. I do not know what epidemiologists were advising them, what expert advice they were getting. But the only thing which has happened is, and that's the irony of the situation, that economists became epidemiologists and epidemiologists became economists. While the latter could not, the former could not flatten the curve, the latter.
Art surgeons became.
They flattened the economy, and then you had a bizarre, absolutely bizarre justification given. That if we wouldn't have had a lockdown by 15th of April, we would have had 8.6 lakh cases. You see, to get from 381 cases to 8.6 lakh cases, you needed a growth rate of infection of 40% per day. And the worst that has happened across the world is 19.2% with Russia. India has never gone over 7.6 in terms of the annual, the daily growth rate of infection. And
Manish, let me go back to Dr. Saab again. Dr. Saab, I'll come. Dr. Saab, tell me, he has made very serious allegations against your government. Do you think that lockdown, the way it was implemented, the way it was imposed, later on withdrawn, and now open the lockdown country suddenly? What is the justification? Because the curve is.
I don't think any decision was taken suddenly. It was only after taking all the chief ministers into confidence. And unfortunately, my friend Manish ji is hiding the fact that before the 24th of March announcement of a lockdown, the entire nation was a part of the Janata curfew on the previous Sunday. So in a way, a kind of trial of Janata curfew, kind of a lockdown was already there. People were conscious of the seriousness of the whole thing. They had participated. Some kind of a preparation of a collective mind exercise was also underway, and therefore it's wrong to say that all of a sudden it was announced. People were kind of aware that some kind of a measure of this kind is impending. I mean, it is likely to be there. At the same time, if we compare our country and the performance, I mean, I'm not going into the statistics. At the same time, I'm not going to indulge in wordplay saying that epidemiologists have become economists and this thing was flattened and that thing was not flattened. If we go to hard statistics, say for example, Sweden with a population of 1.2 crore, the cases today stand at 45,133, whereas Uttarakhand of the equal size, 1.2 crore, the cases are just 1,411. Iran, a population of 8 crore, almost close to similar to Madhya Pradesh, where the cases are 1,73,000 plus. In Madhya Pradesh, they are 9,400 plus. So, given the size of India, given the disparities in economic situation and other backgrounds as well, including literacy rates and various other issues, I think our country, I mean, there is nothing kind of patting self on our backs, but at the same time, we cannot undermine the success achieved by the Corona warriors. Let us not insult them. Let us not say that they have failed. That is the only small point I am trying to make here.
They have a point in terms of statistics. You look at the statistics, maybe what people are talking about, that India is the worst position, the fourth largest number. Look at the population. So today I was seeing yesterday some TV to the fourth, it has crossed so and so country, it has crossed so and so country. America, Brazil, Russia, they're the top three above us in terms of number of cases. Their population put together is only 98 crore. The number of cases in these three countries are about 16 lakh. Whereas we in 35 crore people, only 3,10,000 cases. One third of what the other countries have. In terms of number, yes, there was no. I agree with the point. In terms of the panic, I would call the pandemic panic paddlers, triple Ps in this country are very active to demonize the whole thing, which includes political parties also. Instead of supporting what is happening in the country, and now your three governments are there, two governments, Punjab and Pondicherry, but like Punjab government is doing very well according to what the leader. So why can't the Congress party as a party come together and give an alternative solution in terms of governance and containment?
Prabhuji, again, the statistics do not tell the real story. If you look at the testing rate of Spain or Italy or even Iran or all the other countries that Mr. Shastrabuddhe cited, their testing rates are much, much higher than what India has ever tested. So therefore, the infection rate that you have at this particular point in time is no indicator, and I say it with the greatest sense of responsibility, of the extent of infection in our society. It's a virus. I remember a colleague of yours, maybe it was the editor of the Hindustan Times, who wrote a piece or an editorial, I think about 2 weeks ago. And he said that very knowledgeable people and serious people believe that about 15 to 20 crore people in India may have already been impacted by COVID-19. You see, the fact is that yes, compared to most of the other countries, our mortality rate is fortunately low. And the reason why our mortality rate is low is primarily because one of the reasons which is speculated is the BCG vaccination. Most of these countries where you have a high mortality rate actually never went through the BCG inoculation process because these diseases have been eradicated from their country. The other thing is that the poor in India, because they generally live rough, have a much higher immunity than the middle classes or people from affluent sections of society. For the life of me, I cannot understand if, let us suppose, 5 to 6 crore people have walked home, even if, let's suppose, they were not tested, if you were running high fever or if you had breathlessness, obviously you would have landed up in the nearest medical facility. But that has not happened because, fortunately, for reasons which have yet not been scientifically established, our immunity seems to be much better than the immunity of some of the Western societies. So therefore, these numbers, of 3 lakh infections, etc., which are, well, let's say high when you compare them with other countries, actually do not tell the story at all, because these numbers are at an abysmal testing rate. Number 2, United States of America never closed down its economy even for a single day. I mean, if you were to, at the height of the lockdown, look at the flight tracker, while flights all over the world were absolutely non-existent, the US skies were buzzing with aircraft. So the United States took a conscious decision, right or wrong, that we will take the hit. They have 100,000 dead, more than the Vietnam War, but they said that we will not take the economic hit. Now, so that's a decision which they took. And compared to the United States of America, where the political fight over COVID-19 between the governors and the president has been extremely acerbic, I think the opposition has been extremely respectful and deferential to the government, notwithstanding monumental governance failures insofar as combating COVID-19 is concerned.
Manish, you have made very serious challenges, allegations also, and made a very, what I call, some kind of a statement which creates panic also. You are saying the number which can be 15 crore, 20 crore and whatnot.
I'm only quoting.
No, yeah. But there, as you rightly pointed out, there are so many virologists in the country, and you can also about people who are predicting various things. All the journalists are doing it, everybody is doing it. Nobody has got a scientific formula to tell us. The question 15, 20 crore, are you saying, I will also come back to your own state? It means Punjab will be the same situation. You are testing less, you will be same position in other states where you are ruling.
Unfortunately, Prabhuji, a national phenomena. The fact is, if you, on an average, look at the number.
But what prevents you from testing more?
No, you see, because of this.
And tell the BJP, we have done it, you have not done it.
Capacity, Prabhuji. Ultimately, the reason why we are also testing less is because we do not have that kind of capacity. We do not have that kind of scale. You see, most of these other countries that you talked about have much better public health systems than we do. In fact, our public health system has been a casualty because of neglect by governments over the years, and health is a state subject. I'm not blaming the NDA BJP out here. So therefore, in fact, we are lucky that the virus is not airborne. It is, because of human to human transmission. So if you really want to take away something from this pandemic, the one takeaway is that you need to find that 6 lakh crores in order to completely and absolutely rebuild India's primary health infrastructure across the country, so that next time if we have a situation like this, we do not have a situation whereby people are not able to find beds in hospitals, or you have three or four people lying on one bed in a hospital, you have people lying next to dead bodies. The fact is that the true tragedy of this pandemic has not even come out as yet. I mean, the media has been, and for right reasons, extremely restrained in their reporting. But if you go by the anecdotal evidence which is available on social media, which people have put out, that even when they got to the hospital, they were not attended to and unfortunately succumbed. Shahid Siddiqui, talked about his niece. All of us are aware of that. These are hard realities, and I think if the government wants the opposition to cooperate, like you're talking to the chief ministers, what stopped the Prime Minister from calling an all-party meeting? What stopped the Prime Minister from calling the leaders of the opposition in both houses for a meeting?
Dr. Saab, 1 minute. I'm getting questions also on my phone. Very interesting. After listening to both of you, one, Mr. Farooq has sent a question. If a pandemic cannot bring opposition and ruling party on the same side, is India doomed forever? That's
an absolutely puerile question, Prabhuji, with great respect. For the simple reason, let's rewind back, to in time the British Parliament was regularly functioning, and opposition was holding the government to account, for its failures. In fact, the biggest criticism today against the Australian government is that they have postponed a session of Parliament, and they said that the Australian Parliament, even during the First World War, the Second World War, and the Spanish flu, kept meeting uninterruptedly. So therefore, I do not think questioning the government. In fact, it is the responsibility of the opposition to question the government, to hold the government to account, and the government should take this criticism or this questioning in a constructive spirit and not as if we are nitpicking on them.
Dr. Your response to question.
I tell you, see, we are all here to take all the constructive suggestions and even the criticism also in a very positive spirit. No doubt about it. Point is, the Congress party and the opposition parties together will have to kind of fine-tune their strategy and tell us what exactly are we supposed to do. Their state chief ministers are saying one thing, their party leaders are saying another thing. For example, continuing with the parliament, we decided, Prime Minister is on record having addressed the BJP parliamentary meeting when the budget session was on and saying that we have to fight, we have to continue with the session, we are not going to abruptly end it. But then all the opposition parties wanted it to be ended, wanted it to be halted, and therefore finally it was done like that. Now, what exactly is the opposition's demand insofar as all these issues are concerned?
That's you are not even hosting the committee's meeting. You are afraid of
committee meeting. Existing rules do not allow us to do that, sir. अगर existing rules के मुताबिक अगर हम अपने घरों से वो मीटिंगें चलाते हैं तो पार्लियामेंट्री मीटिंग्स के बारे में एक सीक्रेसी का एक एलिमेंट होता है. If I am sitting from my home and participating in it, there is no secrecy in it. We are not supposed, as per the existing rules.
That's how I'll interrupt you. I agree with you what you're saying, rules and whatnot. Our Prime Minister, known as a technology expert, titan. In fact, he had developed technology and used technology in such a way. He's hosting all sorts of meetings with everybody on the virtual conference. Why can't you hold? He's talking secret things all the time with everybody.
The presiding officers of both the houses are meeting, reviewing the situation, and they are applying their mind as per the reports suggest. So let us wait. Again, there is a procedure. The House Rule Committee will have to resolve that way, that we are allowing these concessions in the present rules and regulations. Meetings can happen.
Dr. There is a question somebody, Sharman Malhotra, has put for you. Will the BJP admit that it was Rahul Gandhi who first flagged COVID as a global risk, even when Modi ji was parading Trump around India?
Well, see, Prabhuji, the tightrope walk which I was referring to, while on the one hand, we didn't want any paranoia to be created out of this, fear-mongering and all sorts of things. On the other hand, we also didn't want the people to go ahead with a gung-ho approach with carelessness kind of and appearing that business is going to be as usual, which is not going to be. And therefore, to strike a balance in between, to the extent possible, we continued with the agenda, what was there before the House of Parliament. houses of parliament and all other activities as well. But when it became very, very essential to, and the opposition and several other political parties also demanded in so many words that we should not continue with the session. As per the, in connoissance with the opinion of the opposition parties also, we decided to abruptly end the parliamentary session. So we are completely conscious of what all opposition is saying, and their suggestions are also being taken. The Prime Minister himself hosted meetings of the leaders of the political parties in the parliament, and as the record says, that continuously both the Prime Minister and the Home Ministers, both of them are in dialogue with the state leaders, state chief ministers.
And also, there is another question. Let us move back to from other issues as well, where the opposition, Congress party, and other parties and your party, they are not on the same page when the crises are happening in the country. Because there seems to be confrontationist politics in the country, which is going up, intolerance is going up from both sides. For example, on China, both are speaking in different languages. Opposition says you are hiding facts from the opposition. It's a national prestige. Your neighbor Nepal is really now talking in terms of guns and metals, and you have problem with every neighboring country, and the opposition party, Manish has written so many articles on this. So I would like to ask you, Dr. Sir, why opposition not being taken into confidence on national issues? Like China, what is happening? Nobody knows whether they are sitting in our territory or not sitting in our territory. Take into confidence, they will support you with things that shared with them.
Well, if some of the opposition leaders are more interested in talking to the Chinese ambassador, what can we do? I mean, they should be dialing the Prime Minister's home and talking to the Prime Minister himself, because everything is on record. There are reports about it. Even the Defense Minister had said so many things about China. The Chief of the Army Staff also had said, and therefore I don't think there is any attempt of concealing the information. Everybody knows about it. These are very sensitive issues. You cannot discuss them with a partisan spirit. The nation has to be put in a solid, united place. That is what we are doing. And therefore, things are pretty known to everybody. There is nothing to hide any piece of information from the people. People are aware of it. So let us be responsible while dealing with all these very sensitive matters, whether it is Nepal or whether it is China. And these issues, again, I would say, these are not the new things. I mean, tell me, are the incursions from Chinese army a new thing? I mean, they have been happening during the UPA rule also. China had all these kind of tactics.
Let Manish respond to what you have said.
No,
your leaders are interested in talking to Chinese ambassador and not to the
I'm actually quite amused by Mr. Shastribuddha's response. I wish he had given this advice to Mr. Narendra Modi when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, that he should have actually dialed the Prime Minister rather than going public on it. Let me read Mr. Narendra Modi's tweet out to you of the 6th of December 2013. From China's intrusions to Pakistan's ambushes, UPA government has been absolutely lax in securing India's border. When will centre wake up? A second tweet. A noble nation like ours is being troubled by our neighbours while the centre stands helplessly. We need a strong government to change this. Mr. Amit Shah, whenever the Chinese soldiers want, they come in and have picnic inside our territory, and our government could do nothing. You know, I find this extremely rich that we are being lectured that you need to be sensitive about international concerns. You know, isn't it the same Bharatiya Janata Party which actually brought a no confidence motion in Parliament on the Indo-US Civil Nuclear Agreement? You know, where was the sensitivity at that point in time? It wasn't an agreement on something as sensitive as breaking the nuclear apartheid, getting access to the nuclear suppliers group in India's larger national interest. What were they doing at that point in time? They're accusing us of playing petty politics, but what exactly were they doing? And I can go on chapter and verse exactly what their leaders said when unfortunately Depsang happened, or when the other incident which took place in 2013. The point I'm trying to make, Prabhuji, is what is happening on India's borders is something which is extremely serious. It is not something which has happened after 1987, when we gave them a bloody nose in Samundrak Chu, or in 1967 when we gave them a bloody nose in Nathula. There is a serious situation on the borders, and if I was to widen the canvas slightly, we are looking at our worst strategic nightmare. You are actually looking at a three-front situation. You have the Chinese, who have possibly come in 40 to 60 square kilometers into your territory, and let's not try and brush it under the carpet by calling it a perception line issue. Very serious analysts have written about very active Pakistan-China collaboration, and you have a COVID-19 situation which is out of control in all your major metropolises. So if at all, there is something called a three-front situation, which every strategic expert of consequence has said is India's strategic nightmare. It is today. And unfortunately, what you have is a government which is more interested in buying and selling MLAs in Rajasthan and Gujarat, which is interested in having virtual rallies in Bihar, and they are not interested in applying themselves to the very, very critical governance challenge which India faces. And that's why I said that this country in the past 75 days has understood that we are living in the greatest governance deficit of our times.
Sahab, again, I think you have to reply whatever you think, because I feel the country is going through various crises. Pandemic is, of course, it was not made by the government of India. But what is happening on the border and what is happening in the economy, which I will discuss briefly, because time is running out. You can reply to him the kind of serious allegations he has made. Challenge.
I think
the worst governance deficit.
I agree. I think while we can definitely talk about governance deficit alleged by Manish ji and others, but at least on sensitive issues like China and other issues about our border security, I think let us not be exaggerating the things. I mean, Mr. Tiwari and all others know very well how did we deal with Doklam issue, for example. Even in the current situation, how our eastern neighbor was kind of compelled to backtrack. I mean, it's a common knowledge. The defense minister has been addressing the media also, or has been sharing the information. Even the chief of defense staff is also sharing the information. There, as I said, no question of hiding any piece of information from the people. We are taking everybody into confidence, and the Prime Minister will speak when the situation demands in that way. I mean, we are not wanting to overplay anything, and therefore it's a very sensitive issue. We are dealing with it with a professional discipline kind of, and therefore let us not be creating any paranoia out of it and saying that we were the custodians or while we were in power, we were dealing with the situation in a better way. That is not the case. I mean, let us not be self-deceptive in this way.
That's another question which is bothering everybody. Unemployment. I'll come back to you, Manish. Give me some questions there. Because the economy we have left out, and because the economy is more important, we have seen the migrant labor on the road, people don't have the money, demand is not there, contractions happen, economy is not picking up. Dr. Saab, I want to know, because the three things, you have the pandemic, you have the neighbors problem, you have the economy. Don't you think India is going through the worst crisis at the moment? How you are trying to get out of it? Modi ji is known for coming out with some kind of innovative ideas, but during the last 90-75 days, people are still looking towards him to come back, how he is going to recover out of these three problems which are taken over the country now.
Well, I think if you look at the fine print of the Atmanirbharta Abhiyan and all the packages that have been announced by the finance minister in a series of press conferences, I think it covers most of the issues, including that of the migrant labor, the impetus to be given to our MSME sector, agriculture reforms, which the government has announced through 2 ordinances. All these things are kind of timely taken steps. And insofar as our neighboring countries and defense-related issues are concerned, again, Atmanirbharta, being self-reliant, is the only answer. And the government has already, in a big way, trying to have defense productions also on an indigenous platform. And therefore, I think the government is conscious of the seriousness, has taken steps in right earnestness, and I'm sure, as I said, the crisis is extraordinary. Therefore, It will take some time, beyond doubt, and we are fighting against an invisible enemy. That is also true. Therefore, let us not be impatient. Let us give some more time, because now the economy has opened up. People are limping back to normalcy, and things will definitely move in the right direction, beyond doubt. Although the crisis may not be over, I am aware of that. But still, I think let us not lose heart, let us not lose hope. Resolutely fight it in a very united way.
Manish,
No, Prabhuji, the fact is that Dr. Saab made a point with regard to Dokla. The reality is that if Dr. Saab was to visit every independent source of strategic literature which is available on Dokla, he would find that 1 year after Dokla, except for withdrawing from the flashpoint, the Chinese have virtually taken over the Doklam plan. That is the unfortunate reality. They have augmented their infrastructure, they have augmented their logistics, they have moved forces, and so therefore that's the classical Chinese way of dealing with a situation, that while they may concede from the flashpoint, but they never give up the vantage points which are of strategic importance. And that is really the concern with regard to Pang Sang So, and more than Pang Sang So, with regard to the Galwan Valley, which overlooks the DBO road. That while the Chinese may withdraw from a particular flashpoint, but what is germane is that have they been able to achieve tactical domination of those heights, whereby they can at will, impede any kind of movement on the DBO road, and so therefore, even on the economy, the crisis in the Indian economy, Prabhuji, did not start with COVID-19. The Indian economy was in a free fall for 7 quarters consecutively before the COVID-19 pandemic hit us. So therefore, the process of dismantling the Indian economy actually started on the 8th of November 2016 with the demonetization strike. It was followed by a completely ill-conceived and badly implemented goods and services tax, and the manner in which the central government is holding the states to ransom, whereby they are not even giving them money which is legitimately owed to the states, I think requires a very serious revisit of the entire goods and services tax paradigm itself. At some point in time, we need to look at it fresh. So therefore, I think it's high time the government got real, and the government realized that we are facing some very serious challenges. When any country has faced challenges of this enormity, most of them have built a national consensus. Like during the Second World War, Britain actually had a national government consisting of all political parties in order to see them through the crisis. Of course, that's not the kind of statesmanship that I expect from the BJP.
But are you suggesting, Manish, let me stop, because you are making a statement because there is a democratically elected government which has got majority. Your party could not get even the opposition status. You are asking for a national government at time. Popularity. I'm suggesting.
I'm only saying that in a moment of grave crisis, if you were to rewind back to the September of 1939, when Chamberlain was compelled to resign because the Munich Pact was absolutely thrown into the dustbin by Adolf Hitler when he decided to invade Poland, Britain did not look at what was the strength of which party in their parliament. Winston Churchill actually put together a national government and had some of his most bitter critics, including the man
He lost the election. He lost the election after that.
He subsequently did lose the election and subsequently did come back again also. So therefore, that is the nature of the democratic beast. But
Manish, you must give. I have heard you, but the question is, you have the government is talking about, and we are talking. You have crossed the foreign exchange reserves of $500 billion. That means there's some kind of faith in the Indian economy. You have got such a cumulative foreign exchange. You must give some credit to the government now.
Prabhuji, the saving grace is the foreign exchange reserve that we have. And I think undoubtedly that's a reserve which has been built up over the years. But all that I'm trying to point out is that government does not have a strategy to deal with the economy. Every rating agency, every institution says that the fiscal part of the stimulus package is not more than 0.8 to 1.2% of the economy. What you have is a demand collapse. Till the time you do not put money directly into the hands of the people, even if you were able to solve the supply side problem, the wheels of the economy will not start turning. Just day before yesterday, somebody was telling me one of the biggest shirt makers in this country, a gentleman in Karnataka, who makes shirts for Zodiac and all these people, he just shut shop. He shut shop not because, he did not have the money to carry on, but he said there is no demand. And in a situation where you are looking at an open-ended pandemic, I do not see anything except essential spending happening. So therefore, even if you were to give the FMCG industry, even if you were to give the other industries a lifeline in terms of a loan facility, who's going to avail of the loan when there are going to be no buyers for the product?
Manish, I am very happy to hear from a congressman talking about demand side as right. You are the father foundation to your party created supply side model in 1991. In 2020, the system was infiltrated by the supply side economists in the country. They created a huge supply side, but never bothered about demand because...
What was the demand side response, Prabhuji? In fact,
because demand was not picking up. But you were giving concession to the various people. Even Modi government last year gave 1,25,000 crore rupees concession to the corporate sector. And we saw the figures, even the corporate taxes have gone down after that, instead of going up. The question is, I'll go back to Dr. Saab, because the policies of the economy, you are facing these challenges so much. Have you got any exit out of it? Because Modi, this is Modi's testing time. He has never faced this kind of test in the past.
Well, I think, first of all, let me respond to Mr. Tiwari's allegations about GST, and it's a favorite pastime for the opposition to keep on harping about the demonetization. But now it's a thing of the past, and the economy also has recovered. The nation has also come a long way after that. And insofar as GST is concerned, is it not to the credit of this government that every meeting of the GST Council, in which there are several representatives of the Congress-led governments as well, the decisions are taken unanimously with a consensus as its basis. And therefore, as I said, there is a dichotomy. While the Congress states are seeing the rationale behind the moves of the government, the Congress party is refusing to see the reason. And therefore, nobody is going to believe the central leadership of the Congress party when their state leaders are in tune with the plans of the central government. Now, let me also give you the example of how the government is conscious of its responsibility. 15 Finance Commission recommended 41% of central tax devolution for all 28 states during the year 2021. Normally, the center releases devolution to all states in 14 installments. There is a record to that effect in a financial year. Whereas in the current financial year, so far, the central government has released, let me underscore, 2 installments in April and May as interstate share of the states as recommended by the 15th Finance Commission. So we are already conscious of the responsibility. We are already sharing the resources with the state governments as mandated by the GST Act. And PM did not want the states to suffer. Nobody wants the states to suffer. We are taking them along, and already that devolution has happened. Let me put this on record. At the same time, insofar as money to be given to the people is concerned, here is the Prime Minister's Kisan Samman Nidhi, under which 9 crore 50 lakh farmers have been given 72,000 crore rupees. It's a fact, and everybody knows about it due to direct benefit transfer, which is being very vigorously implemented. Now there are no middlemen, and people are conscious of this. Now I'll tell you one example. Women are being given under the PM, the Janadhan Yojana, women accounts are, especially below the poverty line, some 500 rupees are being deposited in their accounts. But I'll tell you, the banking sector people will also share this information, that people are not ready to withdraw the money, because As we know, there is some kind of a social psychological approach as well. People are a little scared.
I'll interrupt
Very
you because time is. I'll interrupt, doctor. Just a minute.
Compel people
That's
to
up. Just a
spend.
minute. Just a minute, because time is passing. Because there are Zoom people. There's a limit to that. You have given statistics. We have read all this because there is still there's not a wow factor. Prime Minister made a very good statement of 20 lakh crore. Everybody was impressed at that time. But the implementation level is come. We are facing also. We know on the practical ground, banks are still not lending. They are not giving anything which they wanted to give. There are implementation problems happening here. Coming to Tiwari, because I'm concluding it, I want the last word from you first, and then I'll get back to you. Just one sentence. What is the one basic flaw in the governance that you are saying deficit? One point which you can say you want to define your own language. You are good at that, and you know.
Well, Prabhuji, the fundamental flaw in the government's approach was that they had no approach at all. In the sense, there wasn't a thought out, reasoned, thought through strategy, either with regard to the pandemic or with regard to the economy or with regard to what is happening on our borders. And so therefore, when we talk about the exposure of a governance deficit, what I am trying to convey is that none of these decisions of the government, none of the decisions of the government will stand the test of hindsight. Every good policy has to stand the test of hindsight. It is only when you look at a policy after it has been implemented that you find whether it was successful or a failure. Now to say that we do not have 6x6 hindsight, and so therefore, or by 6x6 hindsight, you can criticize.
General question like every journalist asks now. Let me conclude, Manish, that I know you do want to speak. I will ask every journalist asks the question. If you have to give the marks at everybody to this government during the past 4 months, out of 10, how many marks you will give it? Pass, fail, what?
Well,
No ifs and buts.
With great regret, would not be able to even give it E for effort.
That's all. What about you? Out of 10, how many?
Well, I would say that this government, and I'm not saying on the basis of.
First give the marks and then give the comment.
Yeah. But let me also tell you that why I'm doing so, because there is a track record. This government has worked wonders insofar as implementation of various welfare programs are concerned, whether it is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, whether it is Janadhan, or whether it is any other scheme like Saubhagya for that matter, compared to the previous schemes under different names of the previous regimes. And this government, there is a phenomenal increase insofar as the success in implementation is concerned. And therefore, on that count, there is a huge amount of confidence in the minds of the people. And therefore, I would give this government 10 out of 10.
Good. That's between almost 0 to 10. Of course, it is expected that you can't find fault with the government. You're a ruling party vice president. He can't find anything positive in the government because he belongs to Congress party. Our idea was to bring some kind of a consensus in the debate. Unfortunately, politics of country is becoming very divisive and personalized. It will continue for many more years. We have seen it I've been a journalist for 45 years. I've never seen this kind of a confrontationist politics in my life. Hopefully, it will become better as we move forward. Thank you very much, all of you joining here.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manish.
Thank you.